Well, my name's Moni Jowsey. So I was born Bless Jowsey in 1974, born in New Zealand. And I was the only one for a while. My mum and dad, I was their firstborn. So I had them all to myself. I remember it well. And then everyone else arrived after that. Most of my childhood that really stands out to me is we were very free family. My dad left the traditional suburban upbringing, and my mum decided she wasn't going to go to church, wasn't going to be involved in her mum's culture. So mum was Indian and Maori blend, so she had lots of different culture around her, but they just decided they were going to be hippies. So mum and dad basically were in the 70s. I was born in 74. And my dad was a guitarist, a builder, he had this big afro. He was just this really cool guy, like an artist. He was one of the guys that sort of started the whole vibe in New Zealand of being free and wild. And my mum, she was probably the most beautiful woman in New Zealand. Like, it was spoken of. My mum's mum was like that as well. The bloodlines were just amazing. So they fell in love, and they have a, beautiful love story. Which I am a product of. And a couple of things that they decided was they didn't want any of us kids to be schooled by the government. So very early on, we were, home educated, homeschooled, and in my world, we were self-sufficient. Like, we moved around a lot, but we always seemed to have, there was always a goat and a cheese and a garden. Like, it was very much a hippie commune vibe, like all across the top of the South Island. There are other places and a lot of journeys, but really my grounding that I lean into is I was completely deinstitutionalized really young. And my foundations were about taking care of each other. Not tribal, like we didn't have any real connection to Māori culture. It was commune more. So I guess where it starts bubbling up for me is we went all the way out to the very end of the Marlborough Sounds, and I might have been, 6 or 7 or 8 in there somewhere. And when we got out there, we couldn't get out because it rained for 3 months. So literally, some of the houses out there were made out of mud bricks. So it was mud brick houses, and we'd heat up a brick in the fire, wrap it up in towels, and that would be our hot water bottle. And Dad built a washing machine in the creek, and there were houses out there with kids, homeschooling. The mail boat would come with our schoolwork and drop off some milk powder or some mail. But very early on for me, I remember the sovereignty and the declaration of saying, we're just got nothing to do with society. We're different. So my education, I was, as I said, homeschooled, but I was self-educated. Like, I've always been right into learning what I want to learn about. Now, I was in correspondence school, which meant that I'd get the lessons, do the work and finish. So when I was about 14, I got my year's work. I did the whole year in 4 months. There was like 11 subjects, and I think I got like 10 A's. I got a D in Japanese or something. And I thought, sweet, I'll have the rest of the year off. So I did. And during that time, I guess I started my social adventures, and Mum's like, what do we do with her? And I was literally like on the road, partying, just smoking dope, dealing marijuana, just having a ball. And the funniest thing happened, I got closer to sort of 16, and I might have been 15, I did that big year of schooling, because one night I filled out a form to be an exchange student in America. And I filled it out. I thought, I want to be an exchange student in America, because I remember Michael Jackson, Madonna, I'm like, America, that was what was happening in New Zealand. There's a TV at someone else's house. I go, oh my God, America. So I thought I'll just go to America. Filled out the form, and I got called up, come for an interview. So this is so random, because I went along to this interview and I thought, what should I do to, really make sure I win? So I wrote a song called Nuclear Free New Zealand. and I wore this bright jacket, like fully patched up, red and blue, and I had my hair all out, and I went up to this amphitheatre, and there's all these teachers there, you know, traditional kind of interviewing, AFS, like world-class intercultural exchange people. And I just popped my guitar out and started singing. We've got life on this planet. We've sure got life on this planet. Strumming away, you know, having a ball. And I going, whoa, this is different from the other kids. Well, they just loved me. And I think every year they have to give a scholarship to someone who's of maybe Māori culture, Māori descent. I have a small amount of Māori blood, maybe a single mother family. I got a scholarship to go to America for a year, paid for by the New Zealand government. I haven't even been to school. And I'm like going, perfect, this is my escape from this shithole. So I was like, anyway, I had the funniest day. So I got accepted. And I'm like, perfect. Started packing my bags. And next thing, I'm pregnant. So I'm pregnant with a scholarship to go to America. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, what should I do? Mum, what should I do? And Mum said, well, do you want to have the baby? And I'm like, well, not really. I guess, I don't know. What do you think? She said, well, if you have the baby, I'll look after it for you and you can go. And I'm like, perfect. So I said to the committee, I'm going to have a baby and then I'll go. And they're like, what? You can't do that. And I'm like, yes, I can. This is my scholarship. So they asked which country in the world would accept me. It was Denmark. Denmark was the only country in the world that would accept an exchange student after they've had a baby. So I had a baby, darling Jake, my firstborn son, and that's a whole story. But it was beautiful. Mum came and took Jake home, and I had a little sort of reorientation and packed my bags and went to Denmark for a year and lived with this amazing, well-to-do, high-end, high society dentists with 2 daughters, my age, and they just looked at me and thought, we're going to have to sort this girl out. And I went to school, learnt Danish, learnt how to dress and walk, and they really took me on. And I just learned about a whole nother universe. And I thought, wow, this is cool, this is different. So I got out. Yeah, I put on like 10 kilos. I was really fat. When I got home, Mum was like, hello, lovely. I was so excited to eat all that food. And I'd just had a baby as well. So it was a whole stage. Yeah, I guess it opened my eyes to the world. And I really woke up to possibility. And I noticed who was having more fun and who's got the money and who's in charge. And I could really see just contrast, I think. The contrast really struck me. So my father's business stemmed from my granddad's business, which was identification systems for animals. So all the dog tags, for example, across, I don't know how many countries, many, but all Australia and New Zealand, and cattle tags. That's injection moulding with numbers, stamping. So my family business was identification systems. So it's quite funny, really, considering the paradigm we're in now. I learnt, because after I got back from Denmark, I went to university. I got into university because of my scholarship, but I'd never even been to school. So it was all the way. I've always been very just outside the box on how to make sure I'm getting what I can in the moment that's going to make things move for me, to learn and evolve, self-directed. And once I got to university, I was actually studying linguistics, socioeconomics, religion, education, psychology. I wanted to teach children. I wanted to teach languages, English as a second language. I wanted to travel. So those subjects were in there somewhere. Now, I only did university for about a year and a half because then I wanted to go and live with Dad. And because he was in business and I'm going, I don't want to be in this kind of skinny, deal some dope, work in a bar illegally. Like, I was just bored, not learning anymore. So I left university and flew to Adelaide and hung out with my dad for probably just under a year. And I couldn't get my university degree transferred over there. So I started working in nightclubs. Wow, what an amazing experience. It was a massive club in Adelaide. And I just thought, this is unbelievable. How long has this been going on for? Because over there it was 18 was the age. In New Zealand then it was 21. So I just loved it. And I was working with Dad, and Dad taught me systems. He taught me how to make things tax deductible, how to make sure that I'm never on a payroll, that I invoice instead, how to organise customers, to ring them on the day before their deadline's up, like to stay with where people are, like customer service. That was awesome. He just taught me business straight away and in a very short period of time. And I was just a sponge and loved it. And I can smell the money. I remember it. It was like everywhere I went, it was just, everyone just had money. And I'm going, these guys just do what they want. I'd go down the marina and go, wow, this is awesome. Like, yeah, I got really fired up about it. Yeah, so I'd finished in Adelaide. It was just a small town, really. But I'd done my time with Dad, and I got offered a job in Darwin from the same publicans, and they said, you should go to Darwin. You have a ball. So I bought a panel van and drove up the middle of Australia to Darwin in 1995, and I walked into the Vic Hotel there and said, yeah, I'm here, basically, and took over the pub, literally, front door, reformatted all the venue to make it more for women, changed the policy at the front door and kept all the men outside and just drip fed them in as I settled in the ladies. It was a really big thing in Darwin because it was 10-1 men to ladies. So the whole thing about the room was setting the room right, getting the lighting right, and having I just transformed the aesthetics, and it was so beautiful. And I think the revenue went up by 10 times as soon as I got there. So I was significant up there for the pub game in Darwin. And that timing in the 90s was just as women were starting to want to go out. Like pubs were not just for men. I had a hair salon in my pub. I had catwalks put in. I just changed the whole thing, just straight out of my brain, just coming up with these random ideas to keep people to stay. And I had rollerblades and flyers on the street and free barbecues and, pink drinks, and off I went. It just all started, and I'm sure I invented the whole thing. I did. It was all in here. Really good. I was in Darwin for 5 years, which was more than enough to be in Darwin. And I was making a lot of money and spending it. So I got that vibe in, success. I became a subcontractor and had a couple of venues independently from the Vic. In fact, I got kicked out of Darwin because I met my first husband there, and we just went straight into competition with my boss because, it was the full rooster show. So I got kicked out of Darwin and got on the road, and my first husband, Rowan, said, we're going to Byron Bay because it's the only place in Australia left full of backpackers, and they don't have a backpacker bar. And he'd been in Cairns for 5 years, and I'd been in Darwin. So we knew what to do. So we drove to Byron Bay in 1999, and we went undercover to find a venue and take over Byron. And we did. So we just found a big venue down the right end of town, and we worked out who owned the keys, and we started playing cricket with the cops and dealing dope to the Israelis and hanging out in tour desks and making flyers for beauticians and interviewing hairdressers. I did door-to-door sales just to see who lived here. We literally just sussed it out. Really different. No one knew. But as soon as we got those keys, we had a network across Australia with like Oz Experience, Raging Thunder. The backpacker tourism industry was just 3 or 4 chaps that were friends of Rowan's, and they were connected to travel agents across England and Canada and Europe. It was massive. And so Cheeky Monkeys was already placed with that network. So when we opened the doors, Rowan was still building it in the day and then opening it at night. Like, we worked 100 hours a week for 3 years. Didn't drink a drop. We were too busy. We were just flat out building that thing. And it was the best venue I've ever seen. It's just so perfect. Once you got in, you couldn't get out. You can see everyone, but you can't see anyone. There were mirrors so you could perv on someone, but they didn't know that you were looking at them. Like everything about it was about human joy. And I introduced myself to everyone every day. I was like, welcome, you're going to have the best night of your life. You know, they'd walk in and they'd leave. They'd be like, that was the best night of my life. Like, I just remember the engine room of power and the money. I had wheelbarrows of money, just like I had someone counting it and sticking it in boxes. Like, it was just outrageous. And our promotions were just creative. Every day, Rowan and I would come up with a flyer, we'd just make it up, put the floppy disk under the door at the printer. They'd print out the flyers. I'd whip back at one on my rollerblades, give them out to everyone, all the touts. Packed every day, 7 o'clock, packed, queue down the street for 15 years. Like, it was unbelievable. I mean, that's a business story that came from a lot of heart, a lot of creativity and very good timing. And it was just outside of what anyone else would have come up with. It was just so edgy and fun. We had no fear. You know, we bought the building in 2006. We borrowed $4 million. I mean, that was pretty wild. I mean, the numbers told the story, but we totally butchered the numbers. And the bank manager was like, yeah, sweet, let's go. He knew. He's like, go, who cares? Just put the price of the beers up. Like, it was such a wild time. But we just did it. Nothing to lose at all. Full of beans. So yeah, I still feel like that about life anyway. Not in a wild way like that, but I know you just got to organise yourself properly and decide what's important. And we did. And it was beautiful. Beautiful time. The name Cheeky Monkeys came from Rowan and I, because his nickname was Monkey. And I'm traditionally quite cheeky. So it was Cheeky Monkeys. He liked it because it's an English term of endearment, and 80% of our customers were English. So he chose it, I guess, but then it was a bit Cheeky Monkeys. So that was kind of our thing. One thing I realised was the challenge comes with being successful was everyone tries to take you down. That's something I really noticed. I got a fright actually from that. We were really, a lot of people just like take them down. And I've had that experience many times since being more and more confident I get, the more people want to take me down. I mean, it doesn't affect me now. I always try not to laugh. I'm like, I don't know what you're referring to. That's actually not my situation at all. That's what you're thinking about, but that's not what I'm doing. So that's something I've really stabilised as I've grown up, because it is an issue it's tall poppy, it's envy, whatever, but I'm not really interested in that anymore. I had to deal with the cops, and they were really, I think they were almost competitive or threatening. Like, they'd come up to me personally as a woman, and it was full boys club, and they're like, we're going to shut you down, Moni. And I'm like, a bit scared, you know. And my dad used to say to me, if a policeman ever asks you anything, you get out a piece of paper and a pen and you ask them for their badge number. And I was like, what's your badge number? Like, fully like shaking, and they're like, oh, well, and then they wouldn't even talk to me. Like, they just went because they couldn't, you know. Soon as someone becomes accountable and you identify them and what's the contract, bang, you're back in your power. So I really learned that street side. Don't mess with me, man. I've got my license here and it says this and I'm doing that. So, you know, and I went to court, defended the license, pregnant, going, Your Honour, we are serving food. You know, you've given me a 3 a.m. restaurant license. We're serving food all night. I've got a chef employed, there's food. You know, anyway, the court gave us a nightclub license. They were just sick of our drama. But I just stayed to the book and stayed with what I thought was happening all the time. And I learned so much about the illusion of what's actually going on and who's playing who and who's paying who. Oh, man. And then, you know, things like the GST arrives. Oh, well, that destroyed that idea. Secondary payroll tax. You pay so many wages, we're going to tax you twice. Oh, insurance went up because you had a fight outside. You know, all the time as the business grew, these layers of expense and liability started coming in, and we were turning over, you know, 3.5, maybe max at 4 million a year in cash. No ATMs there, no cards, no nothing, no phones either, no cameras, no phones, just cash. And we were serving, 250 meals a night, and we were putting 800 to 1,000 people through a night through the doors on the, main peak times. And for the first 5 years, there wasn't any Australians in there. I had a full bluff. I had my clipboard out. Boys from the Gold Coast would come up and I'd say, got a booking? No? Okay. No, sorry. Next. European backpacker. Hello, how are you going? All right, good. What's your room number? Oh, lovely, excellent. Come in. Fully bluffing the whole crowd on the street for years. Anyway, the pressure on Byron came, Gold Coast started coming down, and the thing was with the backpackers, we never made a lot of money out of them. We made money out of the Australians because we charge them $10 to get in, $20. I'll just charge them. So you want to come in, $50. They don't care. So the reason I share that too is because the layers of bluffing stuff and illusion of it, it's just, you can just do it all the time, but it's more like I can see how it's being done to us as a society, as a person. And that's why, those layers are very interesting to me. What are we actually agreeing to and what's actually going on? In Byron, 1999-2000 was when I really landed into Byron Bay, and I was so entrepreneurial that I somehow made I had a relationship with some people and they liked me, They were local entrepreneurial types. They made up the Chamber of Commerce. Annie O'Halloran, she loved me. She said, you can be my assistant on the New Year's Eve committee. And I went, okay, cool. I was just an assistant, a volunteer. But I just worked. I just loved it. I love people. And somehow I got connected to I don't know, there might have been 20 people that just thought I was okay because I was so full of beans. And I inched my way into that structure and I placed myself into the Chamber of Commerce. I became the liquor licensing accord, advisor. I even got the chair on the liquor accord once. But they kicked me off shortly after because I never asked permission of anyone. So I had to learn how to, like, if you're going to make a decision, committees usually work by voting, Moni. You don't just rush off and do things. So, yeah, I've experienced that committee, corporate, association structures, and I enjoy that stuff. I actually really do, which is why I like working in teams, and I like bringing together the fundamental agreements that we need to stick to that are ethical, but also good for the whole. It's not corporate, see, it's social. One of the things that stand out to me in all my venues was how much I actually just love people. I literally would like to spend more time learning about how people are going with things and what they're up to. And I think that's where I've found an edge of how can I help as well, because someone's helped me along the way. I've had mentors go, hey, I reckon you need a hand with that. And so I like being that person. That's something that's grown on me as I've grown up. So I became a mum again in 2002. So I had twin girls and we lost one of them, which, I think when you lose a baby, something happens where you realise that you're alive. That's what happened for me. I didn't realise that I was alive until she died. It's so weird, but I really feel my life. I really feel like every second counts since that. That was the gift of losing Jade. And I have little Billy, my daughter, not little now, but that moment gave me insight into the power of love and life and being here rather than not being here, and how delicate it is, because it was only one little membrane away that, we didn't have her and we could have been gone. So, that for me was very precious. And then after Jade died, Rowan and I knew we'd have another baby. So we had Jackson. So becoming a mum, actually raising my children, because Jake joined me around that time. I got my son back. Once I'd had Billy, we had Jake move in with us, and then Jackson was born. And really, as Rowan and I separated, which was lovely, it was a mutual agreement, obviously finished with each other. I became a single mum with, 3 kids, and a lot of my friends were mums with kids, and then they were single mums with kids. And I really felt my relationship with Byron extend out into a whole nother way. I was a business person, and then I became someone else. And I really became more connected to my nurturing side. I could feel my mum come through. My mum would come over. She was a homeopath locally, on and off, you know. She'd have clinics here. My sisters and brothers were coming over to work for me. I was so pleased because they could learn how to run a business. They were making money. They were getting a career that they could take those skills back to their own lives. It was a good time. So that was kind of coming towards 2010 and through to 2015, that whole period of Cheeky Monkeys. I was financially supported by the business. We travelled freely and I had the babies. And I really enjoyed being a leader in this town because I had so many women in my life that needed to lean into the fact that I was that kind of person. I'd be like, hey guys, let's bring all the kids together to school. Let's get 2 roast chooks and I'll meet you at 5 o'clock. Like, that was kind of new to the nuclear family of Australia. And that's in me from my communal upbringing and also some of the tribal consciousness that's offered to me from New Zealand. You know, we have the whānau culture, which is all the children matter to all of us. So I could really be that person. I have really treasured business colleagues because it's honest work, a really honest work. And I've established myself in this area for that, but also there's other towns as well, Cairns and Darwin and New Zealand. I have a couple of communities of business people that I would easily sit down with and we just have a look. You know, we work through business together, different business models, how to deregister things, how to re-register things, exit strategies, remodeling a business, changing the debt ratio. Like, really, numbers tell the story. And I have a lot of passion for it. I've saved many hours and toil and trouble through looking at people's businesses. And I love it. I'd happily be a business model mentor. Actually, I am. So yeah, it's kind of come naturally that I can be trusted with people's money, and it's very private. You know, it's very, very private and spiritual money. You don't talk about money, but I do. And it's really, I find it a privilege when someone goes, this is my situation. And we go, wink, wink. Okay, let's have a look. You know, what are we going to do about this? What's the goal? Well, get rid of that, you know, exit strategy that. And yeah, I can definitely help. I have a deep connection to ambition, which can work for and against me and everyone. I've stopped trying to do more than I should. There's a break-even point when it relates to money and also my energy and my ability to cope. So my deep connection to ambition now is to support others to do well with what we have. But back in the day, my ambition manifested as in having 2 venues instead of 1, which meant my cost of doing business went up. So my break-even point went up, and so did my stress. So I have a relationship with that scale. And I think that's where the ego plays a dirty game, because it's so exciting to succeed that you sort of chase the rainbow a bit. So my relationship with that helps me, you know, nurture what really matters in life rather than, that illusion. You've got to have the courage to look at it and then the clarity to change. When everything fell apart for me, I just readdressed or reviewed what's important. And really what it came back to was having time, mainly with my kids, because I didn't spend a lot of time with them when they were young. So reviewing that. And I started working a lot more on myself, like I invested into personal development and really felt the relief of that. I stopped coping and started, enjoying, nurturing myself, but also enjoying the process of letting go of old ideas. And I really feel it's difficult to let go of let go of old ideas if you don't have an outside viewpoint, like a mentor or someone to remind you of what's possible. It's difficult to do alone. I don't find I can do it. Even today, I reach for people who know better. You know, I'll just reach for a bit of support on different perspectives. Creating a new goal has a lot more inspiration, power, and a lot more interest in it than a patch-up job, and how I really moved out of being quite depressed about my post-hospo dilemma was I created a funeral business. Wow, what a thing. Like, I actually had a startup creative funeral company, and I had a database of about 20 celebrants across Australia, and I created a protocol, you could say, about how to deliver a funeral service. And it was doing really well. We did personal interviews with our clients. We developed a beautiful event for people that was about celebration and some spiritual concepts in there about letting people go and taking away a lot of the emotional waste of energy, like to have people really contribute. So the funeral company gave me all this life force. I was very excited, and I learned so much about people again, about what are people thinking about as they pass away. Once again, time. They're thinking about time, wasting time, not having enough time with their family, with their loved ones, the time they've wasted. That was just outstanding to me as I connected with that industry. Well, COVID came and shut that company down because the entire thing was based on crowds of people. So, that was a beautiful business. And also, during that business venture, I found out about corporate contracts and mafia. And I spoke straight to the head honcho of some of that industry, and they just laughed me off. And I could see exactly the flows of money and the contracts between people's lives and insurances and deaths and arrangements. And I found those papers, and I know how that industry works now. Once again, giving me insight into the illusion of control, what we consent to, and what we can change, what we can actually take control of before it's too late. So across my whole life, there's a few things that haven't changed. One is that I can very easily just think outside of the box. I can just take myself out there and look around and come back with fresh information, whether it's through mentorship or introspection or contemplation or discovery. That's what I enjoy about being me. And with the amount of actual real life experience I've had, business, death, life, challenges and social just strange social situations and comparisons that I've seen, I know everything's an illusion. I've tested it. I've been through and back and round again. And for me, I have found a way to support people to be stable and sovereign and free and alive again. And it's really important to me. And I have no problem educating people in this individually, as groups, to change the direction of society. And that's where the fire is in my belly. I have my attention on New Zealand. I have my attention on my business community here, my children and your children, everyone's children. They're not going to get one brass razoo if we leave the responsibility of our wealth up to the government and the corporations. So this is a huge call to action. And I have found the solution, which is safe. I've tested it and I can demonstrate it to anyone, including the government. No problem. Yeah, I have the answer.